Hello everyone, welcome to those who haven't been here before and welcome back to those who have watched before. Thanks for coming again. My name is Leah Langley, and as you can tell from the title of this video, we are going to be discussing the books I read in August 2024. August was a month where I read the most books I've read in a month so far this year, with 7. 2 of those are very short books. We'll get over those at the end of the video here, but let's jump right in. So first up, I read One Day by David Nichols. This was a book that some of you may have seen the movie that starred Annie Hathaway that came out. I don't even know when it came out, a couple of years ago, at least 10 years ago, I think. I'm a big Annie Hathaway fan, so I definitely watched that when that came out. I thought it was alright, but this kind of came back into my mind again because the Netflix series that came out this year, but I always kind of, sometimes on certain stories, it's nice to have a series versus a movie, because a series you get more time to kind of explore the characters. So after seeing that, I was like, okay, let me get back into not get back into the book, but let me read the book. I've heard, good things about this book. And I read it. So let's give you a quick synopsis. It's 1988. Dexter Mayhew and Emma Morley have only just met, but after only one day together, they cannot stop thinking about one another. Over 20 years, snapshots of their relationships are revealed on the same day, July 15th of each year. They face squabbles and fights, hopes and missed opportunities, laughter and tears. Dex and Em must come to grips with the nature of the love and life itself. As the years go by, the true meaning of this one crucial day is revealed. And let me give you my thoughts on it. Again, like my kind of rating on it was like 3.5 to 3.75. This is what I thought about it. One Day is a good book, and I see why it lasted for this long and why so many like it. I wouldn't say I liked it as much as I've heard some people have, but it's a good book nonetheless, and it's a good book nonetheless. I've known about this novel for some time, but like I said, kind of came back to me when the Netflix series came out and stuff like that. So, and I knew the story from seeing the movie and from watching the TV show, obviously. So it was kind of good to kind of see it, how David Nichols planned on revealing it in this text. And kind of like in a synopsis, one day follows Emma and Dexter in 1988 on year after year on the same day, July 15th. We check in on them year after year on the same day for 20 years and see how their lives are changing as they go through times, good and bad, either individually or together. We go on a journey with these two and quickly care deeply for them and their lives. I think the concept of the book is a great one, and again, I see why it lasted so long, but overall it wasn't the knockout punch I was expecting. I still recommend it. I think this is one of those books where I kind of had like too high of expectations. I think kind of similarly around when the show came out, I kept hearing people talk about, oh, this book is such a great book, and so happy they're doing a TV series on it, and yada yada. So when you hear all that talk about the book, not even just the TV show, you're just like, oh, okay, so this is a great book. And obviously the book came out so many years ago. It's already been adapted once into a film and it's getting a TV show, so obviously this is good source material. Like I said, I think the concept was great for it, kind of like going back year after year, checking in on them as they, fray and come together. But I don't know, it just wasn't what I was expecting. I think that's partly why it kind of got the rating it got. Not a bad rating or anything like that by any means, but yeah, that was my thoughts on One Day. I'd still definitely recommend the series. The movie kind of wasn't that great for me when I saw it, but the series I think is really good. I don't really have an idea one way or the other if you want to watch the series first or if you want to read the book first. I kind of change depending on what the material is. Like I'll read the book first or I'll watch the show first. Just depends. So this is one of those, do whatever you want. A good series though, so I would definitely check that out. All right, book 2 for August 2024 is The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne. This book, oh Lord, man. Let me just read the synopsis first. Berlin, 1942. When Bruno returns home from school one day, he discovers that his belongings are being packed in crates. His father has received the promotion and the family must move to a new house far, far away, where there is no one to play with and nothing to do. A tall fence stretches as far as the eye can see and cuts him off from the strange people in the distance. But Bruno longs to be an explorer and decides that there must be more than to this desolate place and meets the eye. While exploring his new environment, he meets another boy whose life and circumstances are very different from his own, and their meeting results in a friendship that has devastating consequences. So even just from that, I mean, you can, I guess they're not telling you where, but 1942, well, I guess they do. They say Berlin, 1942. Anybody who kind of knows anything about time periods, you know what's happening in 1942. Let me just say what I thought about it first, and then I'll kind of go into it more, and this kind of will reveal kind of things I want to say. I said a lot here in my review. I remember stumbling on Boy in Striped Pyjamas, the film, years ago. I don't remember how it happened, but I just ended up watching the film one day, and I was crying like a baby at the end of it. I finally read the novel, and it's excellent. It's so innocent, which makes it all the more heartbreaking. You can kind of tell the innocence in it a little bit from that kind of synopsis because we're through the eyes of Bruno. But let me just keep going with what I'm saying here. The boy in the striped pajamas follows Bruno, a young German boy who suddenly moves with his family to Poland. He doesn't know it's Poland at the time, but it's Poland. He is outraged that his life has been uprooted in this way. One day, while on a walk around the grounds, he meets a young boy behind a fence wearing striped pajamas called Shmuel. Quote here, Bruno was sure that he had never seen a skinnier or sadder boy in his life, but decided that he had better talk to him. And then this is another review I saw on Goodreads that I thought was really good, but I didn't even want to try to regurgitate it. I just wanted to just quote from him, a guy named Rowan. John Boyne succeeded in making me view the world through the eyes of a naive but curious and inquisitive 9-year-old again. He repeated numerous phrases and sentences throughout, some such as out with and the fury, adding childhood innocence to words that stand for anything but. The Bruno kept saying out with, he couldn't pronounce Auschwitz, and the fury was the Fuhrer. There's a scene in the book where Hitler comes and visits the family essentially, and he can't pronounce the words, he doesn't really get it. So your Boyne was really good in kind of getting you in, like kind of how Roman said, in the mind of a 9-year-old, even though you know what's happening. Keep going with my review here. So as an adult, you know what's happening in this book and all the surrounding factors that Bruno is so naive and innocent of. Still, Bruno gets somewhat of a reality check when speaking to Shmuel, but Shmuel, even though he can add more depth to the situation, is still naive in many aspects of what's happening to him and his family. At the same time, Bruno tries to stay positive and is just happy to have a friend since he's had to leave his other friends behind. The tension grows over each conversation and encounter, particularly in the kitchen scene when the lieutenant and as the days and weeks go on, Bruno's new surroundings. The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas is a short but powerful book I recommend to everyone. Again, taking from Rowan here on this little bit to kind of close the review. There are plenty of historical inaccuracies, yes, but this is fiction after all, and aimed at younger readers. If this is a book acts as a stepping stone into learning about the Holocaust more fully, then that will always be a good thing. The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas is a book I wish I had around during my school years. Boyne has crafted an intelligent yet simple story whose use of metaphors and various themes caused the readers to pause and reflect. Books like this are more relevant now than ever. Again, I don't know when I watched this film for the first time. I think it would have been maybe high school potentially. This book came out first in 2006, if I'm saying correctly. And kind of what Rowan said there, and I put at the end of my review, this is a good book, I think, to kind of introduce people to if it's aimed at younger readers. So if you want to introduce someone a little bit to maybe themes or what's happening with the Holocaust, this is a good way to kind of like bring them into it in essence. Like I said, it's one of those books that's so it's really a gut punch, but it really, like I kind of said already, Boyne does well in getting you in the mind of a 9-year-old who's just like has this like veil over his face, like he's just not really getting it. And even Shmuel, who's going through all these horrible things, doesn't really get it fully. And it's hard to sometimes like know he's so innocent because you obviously know what's happening, but you're trying to just stay in the mind of this 9-year-old, even up to the very end, which is so heartbreaking. Which if I watch the film today, I know I would cry at it, even though I know what happens, because it really does well and kind of like get you in that space, trapping you in that kind of period. Yeah. Anyways, books like this are so important to read. They're so important to talk about. And yeah, I thought it was just excellent book. So definitely one I would recommend reading. You can watch the movie if you like. Well, if reading isn't something you want to do it. But yeah, it's very, very good. Okay, book 3 for August 2024 is a book called Hood Feminism. And Hood Feminism, Notes from the Woman That the Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. This was a book that was a recommendation or a pick we did for August for the book club that I have. So I was excited to read this, and we had a great discussion on it with the book club members. Synopsis on it. Today's feminist movement has a glaring blind spot, and paradoxically, it is women. Mainstream feminists rarely talk about meeting basic needs as a feminist issue, argues Mickey Kendall. But food insecurity, access to quality education, safe neighborhoods, a living wage, and medical care are all feminist issues. All too often, however, the focus is not on basic survival for the many, but on increasing privilege for the few. That feminists refuse to prioritize these issues has only exacerbated the old age problem of both internecine discord and women who rebuff at carrying the title. More of our prominent white feminists partly suffer from their own myopia, with regard to how things like race, class, sexual orientation, and ability intersect with gender. How can we stand in solidarity as a movement, Kendall asks, when there is a distinct likelihood that some women are oppressing others? In her searing collection of essays, Mikki Kendall takes aim at the legitimacy of modern feminist movement, arguing that it has chronically failed to address the needs of all but a few women, drawing on her own experiences with hunger, violence, and hypersexualization, along with incisive commentary on politics, pop culture, the stigma of mental health, and more. Hip Feminism delivers an irrefutable indictment on the movement in flux. An unforgettable debut, Kendall has written a ferocious clarion call to all would-be feminists to live out the true mandate of the movement in thought and in deed. Excellent book. So much to dig into. It's one of those books that I think anyone can really get their hands on. Even people who are in this work or know about this stuff to a level, or maybe are on Mikki Kendall's side in terms of uplifting these certain things in the movement. It's still very excellent. Let me just say what I kind of said. I kept it short because I don't know, I probably could have said a lot more, but anyway, let me just read this. Hip Feminism pulls no punches, and you wouldn't want it to. From the outset, any delusions you might have had about Kendall coming in softly in the introduction are quickly gone, as you can see that she's not messing around, has no interest in appeasing any feelings you may have about how the introduction should be, in parentheses, welcoming, etc. And I like that. Before I even keep going there, I liked how, literally from the first page, it was one of those bam! We're not here to sometimes introductions are kind of ooh, let's have a nice welcome, here's a table, here's a cart, let's just relax. No, it was I'm going in, I'm punching you in the throat from the first page. And I really liked that. It was strong, and that's how it was the entire book. Continuing on here, Hood Feminism covers a range of topics that we should all discuss. More specifically, the feminist movement. This book is full of hard truths and is one I recommend to everyone, and especially those with twisted views of feminism and intersectionality. Some of those things mentioned in the introduction and in the synopsis I gave earlier. Quality education, food insecurity, safe neighborhoods, living wage, medical care are all feminist issues, especially some of these issues that are really centered, women are the ones who are most affected by some of these problems, like food insecurity or not having homes, stuff like that. These are things that probably should be talked about more in terms of putting feminism along with these things. It just shouldn't always be separated. And sometimes the feminist movement, as Mikki Kendall kind of outlines, focuses on, what did she say, or what did they say, giving more privilege to the few, but instead of protecting the many. It needs to be wider, it needs to be broader, it needs to be discussed more, and not just pushed to the side and saying, oh, this is their problem, this other movement can do this. No, it should be a feminist problem as well. So very, very good book. Came out in 2020. I definitely recommend it. I think it's one anyone could read. Like I said, if you're a feminist, or if you have twisted ideas about feminism or intersectionality, this is a book you should definitely pick up. I actually have it here. I was going to show it. Hood Feminism. Yeah, so read this one. Actually, it's my sister's copy I took from her. I bought it for actually, but then anyway. Hood Feminism. Read this book. It's a good one. All right. What book are we on? Book number 4? Yeah, book number 4 for August 2024 was Bridgerton, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. Let me just read the synopsis first. I'm not sure if any of you guys watch Bridgerton, but let me read the synopsis. Everyone knows that Colin Bridgerton is the most charming man in London. Penelope Featherington, has secretly adored her best friend's brother for, well, feels like forever. After half a lifetime of watching Colin Bridgerton from afar, she thinks she knows everything about him, until she stumbles across his deepest secret and fears she doesn't know him at all. Colin Bridgerton is tired of being thought nothing but an empty-headed chamber, tired of everyone's preoccupation with the notorious gossip columnist Lady Whistledown, who can't seem to publish an edition without mentioning him in the first paragraph. But when Colin returns to London from a trip abroad, he discovers nothing in his life is quite the same, especially Penelope Featherington, the girl haunting his dreams. But when he discovers that Penelope has secrets of her own, the elusive bachelor must decide, is she the biggest bet or his promise of a happy ending? So this is the 4th Bridgerton book. I've read all the books up to this one so far. I kind of have decided in my head I wanted to watch the TV show, kind of speaking how I spoke about one day. I wanted to watch the series first and then read the book. This is a series I decided to do that on instead of doing the opposite way. But as some of you may know, this is the 4th book, and we've only had 3 seasons of Bridgerton. They skipped over Brother Benedict. He's going to be the focus of next season. So I actually read the 3rd book already just because I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to read... Anyways, I read the 3rd book already, even though I haven't seen the series. And I skipped over to this 4th book. So I read all 4 books so far. I typically have not done reviews for books. Like if I've read a book, I think I read The Duke and I, which is the first Bridgerton book in 2020. I didn't do a review for that one, and I kind of had a rule for myself not to write a review for any other books in a series if I didn't do a review on the first one. But since I'm doing these videos now, kind of talking about my books, I wrote a little something about Bridgerton 4, and here we go. Bridgerton number 4 is all about Penelope and Colin, as I said earlier. From watching the Bridgerton TV series, we know who Lady Whistledown is, but Mayfair finds out in this book, which is something I forgot coming in. I was like, oh yeah, they don't know who Lady Whistledown is, so it was interesting. So coming into this book with secret knowledge was interesting, as I could easily decode the hidden language. So with that twist, which to be honest came sort of underwhelmingly, that I knew would eventually come, and all the romance in this book, it makes for a decent read. Honestly, I can't recommend or not recommend it. It's one of those books, I'm in for the long haul now. Bridgerton, I'm going to be reading every book, and I'm going to be watching every series. I've just decided that, and that's what I'm going to do, so that's fine. I guess I should say here, if you haven't seen the Bridgerton TV series on Netflix, I'm going to talk about who Lady Whistledown is, so if you don't want to see that, skip ahead like a minute or two. Anyways, Lady Whistledown is Penelope, and we know that from watching the TV series. I think she was revealed as Lady Whistledown, I think by season 2, like early in season 2. And in the Bridgerton series this season, everyone knows she's Lady Whistledown. Well, only Eloise, who's a Bridgerton sister, knows that she's Whistledown, and she gets revealed to everybody in the book. In the TV series. I'm getting myself confused here. That she's Whistledown. So in this book, it was very much like she is the only one who knows until a certain point, and it's kind of like Colin is going on about Lady Whistledown, how annoying she is, and Penelope's like, oh yeah, and trying not to say anything. So since I knew it already, it was kind of like, this is interesting. When is this going to come out? And it came out kind of underwhelmingly. Like I said, it was kind of like she had said something twice or something that was like the same language she used in a paper or something, and like he followed her to a church, and like, anyways, it was just kind of like this weird, not weird, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was hoping for like bam bam, like some like crazy something, but I guess that's my own expectations having those. Oh well. So yeah, honestly, not bad, not good, just kind of decent in the middle there. Like I said, I'm going to be reading every Bridgerton book anyway, so yeah, whatever. Let's move on to book number 5 for August 2024 is Summer on the Bluffs by Sunny Hostin. This book is in her series, her first of her series, like Summer Beach. So this is Summer Beach number 1. This book came out in 2021. Little synopsis here. Welcome to Oak Bluffs, the most exclusive Black beach community in the country. Known for its gingerbread Victorian-style houses and modern architectural marvels, this picturesque town hugging the sea is a mecca for the creme de la creme of Black society, where Michelle and Barack Obama vacation and Meghan Markle has shopped for a house for her mom. Black people have lived in this pretty slip of the vineyard since the 1600s and began buying property in the 1800s, making this posh town the embodiment of old money. Every summer, Esperanza Perry Soto, a beautiful and talented Afro-Latino lawyer, escapes the fetid heat of New York City for the gorgeous weather, cool weather, and stunning views Oak Bluff offers. Sharing a cottage on the beach owned by her ama, with her husband and 2 good sisters, Perry is looking forward to trading meetings and clients for days of languor and fun. Memorial Day arrives and the season begins. Some of the nation's wealthiest, most powerful, and famous from the worlds of politics, art, and entertainment meet to swim, dance, party, and chill, while a few can't leave work behind, others indulge in different kind of business affair. But this beach on the Bluffs is different. Alma is moving from the south of France to reunite with her college sweetheart. She is going to give the house to one of her goddaughters, and she has invited all 3 of them to spend their summer with her the way they did when they were kids. Each of the women want the house desperately. Each is grappling with the secret that they fear will make them lose Alma's approval and the house. This book kind of came to me, like I said, Sunny Hostin wrote this book. She's a co-host of The View. A View is a show I watch. I've been watching every day for 10 years at least. Has it been 10 years? Yeah, 10 years, I think. About maybe 9-10 years. And she's an Afro-Latino lawyer. She spends summers up there, so it's very familiar to her. And yeah, it's an okay book. Let me just get to my information on it, my review on it. I was more engaged in Summer on the Bluffs in the beginning, but by midway, which also I should say, the synopsis there didn't really give much talk about the beginning about how the goddaughters even came to be goddaughters, but I guess it's not that important. So I was more engaged in the beginning, but by midway I struggled to keep up with everything, mainly because my interest in the book was beginning to wane. So all the back and forths didn't help. It was kind of going a lot back and forth between like the Ama and like some of the stuff and the goddaughters. It was just like flip flopping everywhere. And when you don't have interest in it, it's kind of like, struggling. I think it's right for a first novel, and I'm hoping that the second book, which I'm currently reading, the second book is this one. I'm currently reading this one. There's 3 in the series so far. So anyways, second book, which I'm currently reading, is better and holds my interest longer. I will say so far, I'm maybe like 55-60% through this book, and so far I'm still interested to a level, so it's a little better than the first one. We'll just see how it keeps going. This book, again, I'm going to be reading this year, so I'm going to be reading the second one I'm almost finished with, or I'm halfway through, and I have the third one coming up at some point that got published this year, and we'll see. So, it was a stepping stone you have to take. I took it. I can't really recommend this book because I didn't connect with it that much. Maybe if I read it on a beach, I'd feel better. That was my thoughts on Summer on the Bluff by Sunny Hostin. All right, number 6 for August 2024 is So Late in the Day, Stories of Women and Men by Claire Keegan. An excellent little read. Here it is. Excellent read. I had gotten this book, well, let me back up. Claire Keegan is an author who I read her book, Foster, and I read the book because I saw an Oscar-nominated film called A Quiet Girl a couple years ago. And I watched that film, and the film was so beautiful and excellent. It's about this little Irish girl. Claire Keegan is Irish. It's not really about her, I don't believe. But I watched that film, and it was excellent, so I wanted to read the source material. So I read her book. That's how she kind of came to someone I knew. I believe I read that book last year. And I got this book on Libby, and I was like, oh, let me read this book. And I was about to go on a trip, and I said, oh, let me get the physical. I think they have it in my library. So I grabbed it and read it on the train. An excellent book, honestly. So good. Let me just read the synopsis first before I keep duttering on about it too long. A triptych of stories about love, lust, betrayal, misogyny, and the ever-intriguing intricacies between women and men. Celebrated for her powerful short fiction, Claire Keegan now gives us 3 exquisite stories, newly revised and expanded, together forming a brilliant examination of gender dynamics and an arc of Keegan's earliest to her most recent work. And so it's 3 different short stories here. So the first one, and So Late in the Day, Cathal faces a long weekend as his mind agitates over a woman with whom he could have spent his life if he had behaved differently. In Long and Painful Death, a writer's arrival of a seaside home, and I might say this name wrong, it's an Irish name, Henrik Boyle, for a residency is disrupted by academic who imposes his presence and opinions. And in Antarctica, a married woman travels out of town to see what it's like to sleep with another man and ends up in the grip of a possessive stranger. Each story probes the dynamics that corrupt what could be between women and the lack of generosity, the weight of expectation, and looming threat of violence. Poignant, charged, and breathtakingly insightful, these 3 essential tales will linger with readers long after the book is closed. And will I tell you, it certainly did. So when I first read through it, I was feeling all those things, but it was really for me after I reassessed kind of and did my review, and I was kind of combing through the book again and looking at other reviews and saying oh yeah, and seeing, sometimes when you read things again a second time, but I didn't fully read it a second time, but I honestly might as well have. I was very oh wow, this is good. So before I even talk about my thoughts on it fully, I always find it kind of humorous and ironic even when I have a lot to say about such a short text. This book is 120 pages maybe, and not even 120, it's 100, just about 120. And you can see how small the pages are too, so it's very much, you can get through a page in a second. It's very, very quick. It's funny-ish when I have so much to say about a book that's so small, because a lot of times you've seen a lot longer text. I don't have as many words for it sometimes, not all the time, but some longer text. I'm oh, here's a little paragraph, and that's about it. But this book was the longest review I've had in a while. Same with my next one, actually, too. They're both pretty longish. So let's just jump right in. So like I said, I was looking for a short read for a travel day and stumbled on this offering from Claire Keegan. I had gotten it before, and then I went to the library and got it separately. And like I said, I knew about her first, but I read Foster, which was adapted for the film A Quiet Girl. And I really enjoyed the book, so I said, let me see Claire Keegan again. So from reading that and now reading it, it seems Keegan is excellent at short, quick reads that stick with you. This offering is a collection of 3 stories, So Late in the Day, The Long and Painful Death in Antarctica. This is a quote here from the Washington Post review on the book. It says, "The three pieces in Keegan's latest collection, subtitled Stories of Women and Men, revolve around uneasy, sometimes violent tension in loveless marriages, failed relationships, and chance encounters alike." Back to me here and kind of giving a synopsis on each of the three stories. The title story, So Late in the Day, whose working title was Misogyny, actually, came from a conversation with her students about the difference between tension and drama. And that, I can link it here or put it underneath. In 2022, she did a piece with the New Yorker when this that story first came out, where she was discussing the difference between tension and drama in writing, and it's very good. I'd recommend you reading that. Like I said, I'll link it below. So she wrote this story to illustrate the distinction between tension and drama for her students. And in this story, we meet Cathal, who's reflecting on his relationship with Sabine, who we eventually find out has left him after several acts of coldness. Since this information is kind of withheld initially, we're set up to kind of grow empathy for Cathal. Then once we finally figure out why his engagement with Sabine broke down, he is shown more clearly to us. Cathal contemplates his mistakes in the relationship and his legacy of his father, which leaves him in a place of regrets and hatred. Next, in The Long and Painful Death, we follow a woman trying to enjoy a writer's retreat when a man says he's a professor and has gotten permission to tour the house. She needs to work, so she puts him off until the evening, but she doesn't refuse him altogether, which she wants to do, but she doesn't have the courage to do it. She spends valuable time when she could have been working, making a cake for her upcoming guest. When he arrives, he mentioned how so many people apply to come here, almost baiting her into acknowledging how lucky she is to be accepted. And in turn, she does just that, murmuring, "I know I'm lucky. I'm lucky, I know," Rad, is what she says directly. The professor is more interested in her cake-making skills than her accomplishments as a writer, and is a tiresome kind of guest who could neither create conversation nor respond to be content to have none. It's a story about male anger towards successful women and the female impulse to placate that anger. After the visit, she essentially writes a story about him dying a long and painful death. And finally, in Antarctica, the protagonist is a married woman who always wondered what it would be like to go on a trip and sleep with another man. She's off on a weekend to Christmas shop, that's what she tells her husband at least. On the weekend away, she goes for her desired one-night stand, but instead she finds herself a very desperate and dangerous man at a bar. They explore each other in bed and have a nice night, and in the morning when she slips out to leave to prepare to head back to her husband and children, things go sideways, or some could argue it was already sideways if you were really looking closely. The turn is quite alarming and frankly frightening when it hits, but also you expect something to go awry when, by the way, things are being described in the lead up. Now, Washington Post quote again here. Each story balances somewhere between the frustration and fear of lonely men and the way their greed and hunger grow in the dark. And finally here, the collection of stories are all woven together so excellently with their common themes, and again, Keegan seems to be so masterful at this type of short work with powerful meanings. This is a collection of stories you can read again and again and continually find something new. As I was reviewing this text for this review, I surely did, and at this point, I want to read it all over again a second time to see if anything else jumps out at me or reveals itself to me in a new way. I recommend this work for all. So like I had said in the end there and also earlier, when I was reviewing this, and I honestly should have just read it again because I essentially was combing over parts anyway. I really was just like, oh yeah, I could tell this was going to happen maybe because like this was in here. Like, think how you can kind of just analyze the text. And this is the thing, I wish this copy was mine almost because I could have just like written notes in here. I did get the Kindle as well so I could highlight and keep my highlights. But yeah, it's one of those books that I honestly would recommend to so many people, probably to everyone honestly. It's quick, it's accessible. You could just pick one of these stories if you don't have to read all three if you don't want to, but even if you do, like I said, it's awful short to read. And Keegan is someone who, this is a book that will linger with you. You'll think about it. I find myself, thinking about that one character in Antarctica who was like what happened to her in the end, and yeah, just very, very good. I definitely recommend this. I also would recommend, like I said, Foster by her and the film A Quiet Girl. Just Claire Keegan in general, I like her a lot now, and I'm going to keep finding the things she's doing because she knows how to write a good short little book or short story even. All right, we've made it to the very end. We have the 7th and final book I read in August 2024, and that is, I might say this wrong, but Galatea? Galatea? No, I think Galatea sounds good. Galatea, this is Greek mythology fans, come on over. So this was, again, I was on the way, about to be leaving to go on a little trip, and I was looking for short books to read on the journey up. Or actually, I was hoping or on the journey down even. I saw this book. I didn't want a book this small, but I saw it and I saw good reviews in it. I looked it up quickly and I said, okay, let me just grab it. And for this little book, let me see how long this book is. 56 pages, including the afterword. The afterward's like maybe 5 pages, so it's like 50 pages. Again, you see how short each page is. So I literally read this in 30 minutes, and it's excellent. For this small little thing, excellent. And this Madeline Miller, who wrote this book, I should say her name. I've seen she wrote some other good things that have been rated well, and I need to actually check them out because I do like Greek mythology type stuff. Anyways, all this tottering on, let me just get to what it's about, because you guys I know are wondering. In ancient Greece, a skilled marble sculptor has been blessed by a goddess who has given his masterpiece, the most beautiful woman the town has ever seen, the gift of life. After marrying her, he expects Galatea to please him, to be obedience and humility personified, but she has desires of her own and yearns for independence. In a desperate bid by her own obsessive husband to keep her under control, Galatea is locked away under a constant supervision of doctors and nurses, but with a daughter to rescue, she's determined to break free, whatever the cost. Another book that was so small, but I wrote a lot for it. And a lot for it honestly came from the afterword, because the afterword is like 5 pages maybe, and again, these pages are like awful small, so it really was like, I don't know, maybe not even a full page on like a normal sized book. But I was just, the afterword is, I already was feeling, I do this, let me just read what I wrote and then it'll reveal itself, because I kind of wrote it the way I'm going to say it, so let me just say it the way I want to. Galatea is haunting, brutal, and a brilliant short story. A male sculptor in ancient Greece receives a blessing from a goddess who brings his beautiful sculpture to life. He is intentional about making his sculpture the most beautiful and perfect. He expects this creation of his, he has made into his wife, to do nothing but want to please him and follow his every word. But Galatea has her own wants and desires and does not want to be under his thumb, as he has been her whole existence, constantly supervised, policed, and under his control. She is desperate and determined to save her daughter from a life like this, and is willing to put herself at risk to accomplish just that. In reading the afterword, I found even more depth in this story. Miller's Galatea was in response almost solely to Ovid's version of Pygmalion myth in the Metamorphoses. In essence, Ovid's story is about Pygmalion. The sculptor is disgusted by seeing prostitutes who he condemns as obscene and shameless. He spurns all female companionship and ends up sculpting women out of ivory. He makes her more beautiful than any real woman could be. Ovid lingers on descriptions of Pygmalion stroking the statue's body, kissing it, caressing it with his fingers. He prays to Venus to bring his ivory woman to life, and she does. The two have a child and live happily ever after. And that is essentially the story that this story was told how, basically. Another quote here about kind of that story from the afterword. Ovid's Pygmalion story has a rich history and adaptation of music, dance, poetry, and film and literature. Poets Carol Ann Duffy and H.G. both wrote back to it, as did George Bernard Shaw, whose play Pygmalion was the source for My Fair Lady. Like much of Ovid's work, the story itself is a bit slippery. For one thing, it's actually a story within a story narrated by bitter and grief-stricken Orpheus. Many have seen the romance in it. Numerous makeover movies like Pretty Woman clearly owe it a debt. Others have seen it as a metaphor for how all artists fall in love with their art. Still others, myself included, speaking for Miller here, have been disturbed by the deeply misogynist implications of the story. Pygmalion's happy ending is only happy if you accept the number of repulsive ideas that the only good woman is one who has no self beyond pleasing the man, the fetishization of female sexual purity, the connection of snowy ivory with perfection, the elevation of male fantasy over female reality. Galatea does not speak at all in Ovid's version. Even more tellingly, she does not even given a name. That is one of the few details I took from other sources. She is only called the woman. She is meant to be compliant object of desire and nothing more. So in that, we truly see how Miller gave Galatea an actual name and a voice in this version, because clearly she was just, like she said, a compliant object with desire, nothing more, in the original telling of this work. Quoting again, she demanded her own world, and in creating it, I drew inspiration from many works of feminist literature. As for Pygmalion, I accepted him exactly as Ovid made him. The term incel wasn't in wide circulation when I wrote this, but Pygmalion is certainly a prototype. For millennia, there have been men who react with horror and disgust to women's independence, men who desire women yet hate them, and who take refuge in fantasies of purity and control. What would it be like to live with such a man as your husband? There are too many today that could answer that. Reading this short story in general was impactful till the few short pages of the afterword, which brought the whole history of the story together for me, as I did not know it prior, really was the final jab that made the story connect even harder with me. Galatea by Madeline Miller is so good. You can read it in half an hour. I encourage you all to do so. So that's kind of review for me, and kind of like quoting from the afterword a lot was, honestly, I had no idea about this story. I had no idea about any of this. So I was reading it in terms of, you could very tell from the beginning it was a story about Galatea here, and where she had been going through horrible things, and just like you seeing her just completely under control of this man and trying to break free and save her daughter and all these things. And I thought it was really good, and it was really like, I'm happy that you're able to kind of like get out of that and like muster up the strength to do what you can, to whatever you can to get out of that, in essence. But then the afterword, like I said, was like, oh, so this was like she said, a response to the original telling, and saying, no, we're going to give her a name, we're going to give her a voice, we're going to give her a story, and we're not going to just sexualize her as what you're trying to do here. Short book, excellent book, 30 minutes. You can read this in 30 minutes, I promise you. 45 at the max, I'd say. And it's just excellent. It's an excellent read. It has such depth in it in these few short pages. And find a copy if you can that has the afterword in it. I quoted a good bit in there, but the version I have on Kindle doesn't actually have the afterword. So if you either find it online or just find the afterword. The afterword's excellent, and like I said, for me, really kind of brought the whole thing together and like had a harder punch on it, really. So that is August 2024 in books. We went through 7 books. Thank you so much for watching and being here. We will be talking again soon about the books I have read in September that's coming up. It's September 11th right now. I have not read a full book yet. I kind of took some days not reading. But like I said, I'm in the middle of summer on Sag Harbor right now, and I'll keep going with that. Maybe get another 1 or 2 books in by the end of the month. But yeah, let me know what you're reading. As always, give me recommendations. I will link my Goodreads below as always. You can see my reviews, my highlights, my notes there on these books. If you have any other questions, feel free to mention it in the comments. But yeah, we will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for hanging around. This was a little bit of a longer one, but I had a lot to say, a lot of good books this past month. So see you guys later. Bye-bye.